Welcome back, everyone. The president has always hailed the American consumer, saying she has done a lot to boost economic activity around the globe. The problem is we buy more stuff from abroad than folks abroad buy from us, and that really bothers the president of the United States, as it does his Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, who joins us right now. Secretary Ross, very good to have you, sir.
Thank you for having me on.
Now, this goes a long way, or you hope will go a long way, to addressing the large trade gap between ourselves and, for example, the Chinese. With them last year, we had a $347 billion trade gap, accounting for more than 60% of our overall trade deficit. How does this start cutting away at that?
Well, it starts cutting away at that in several regards. First of all, for more than a decade, we've been trying to get legitimate U.S. beef exports into China. And they had expressed some concerns about the mad cow disease in the early days. They expressed some concern about use of hormones. Now we've overcome those obstacles, and as of July 16th, U.S. will be free to export livestock to China. That's a huge, huge breakthrough, because this is a $2.5 billion market, out of which we've been totally kept.
Now, of course, it's $2.5 billion of what is a $340 billion plus gap. Where else do we start cutting away at it?
Well, in addition to that, we have worked out a new regime for LNG exports. As you probably know, China is the world's largest importer of LNG. We're just in the early days of exporting. But there had been some regulatory snafus, frankly, on both sides of the equation, which we now have cleared up.
And now, LNG, you're referring to liquefied natural gas? Is that?
Yes,
okay,
for liquefied natural gas. And what this will do is let Chinese importers sign long-term contracts with U.S. exporters. LNG prices have been languishing for quite a little while because, frankly, we have a good deal of oversupply. So it seemed weird. We have too much of it. It's much cleaner than coal would be, and yet we weren't really doing a big job of exporting it to China. So now we've taken care of the problems on both ends. Third thing it will do that will help the trade balance is China had been resistant to biotech, to genetically engineered products coming from the U.S. into China. There have been 8 applications that have been stalled. Now we've worked out this whole regime where there'll be the definitive hearing on it before the end of this very month, and then there's a whole process for fixing whatever imperfections there may be left over after that. So these are 3 gigantic steps in 3 gigantic areas of goods. Then in the services,
do you expect the Chinese will honor it, Secretary? Because the rap on the Chinese, you can't trust them. Your boss, the president, has said in the past while campaigning, they rig their currency, they rig their numbers, they rig everything, and you can't trust them. What's changed?
Well, we will see if anything has changed, but what has definitely changed is now they're pinned down to very specific actions on very specific, very near-term dates. We've never had trade agreements before. Well, we didn't with them or with anybody that had this level of precision to solving long-standing problems.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce came out with a statement that was at best guarded praise for what you're trying to do, saying that hopefully this will ensure full and timely implementation of commitments China has already made. In other words, they'll go on to say the real work lies ahead, to your point, Secretary, but that they're kind of in that Missouri show-me frame of mind. Are you?
Well, it's a little strange because Chamber of Commerce historically has supported the idea of free trade and lifting trade barriers, so I'm a little surprised that they would be discouraged by the first real breakthrough that we've had with China in decades.
Now, what got us to this point, sir? I mean, their promise to help on the North Korean thing. In other words, was there a timetable on that, Secretary, by which they had to have gotten back to us and shown the North Koreans to jump, you know, to cool it?
Well, there are several things. I think the real breakthrough is the personal chemistry between President Xi Jinping and President Donald J. Trump. That's the real breakthrough that occurred.
You're talking about when they gathered at Mar-a-Lago in Florida?
Yes, and that was on April 6th and 7th. Here we are, barely a month later, and we already have a breakthrough. Well, trade agreements are normally denominated in multiple years before anything tangible comes.
But Secretary, they haven't seemed to have been able to get the North Korean dictator off his crackpot ledge. So I'm wondering if they can't do it, and the North Koreans have been saying bad things about the Chinese, if they're even capable of doing it. If that's the case, whether it shows problems for even this deal.
Well, I don't think so. I think there's a new relationship pattern being struck between China and ourselves. And Vice Premier Wang Yang has been very, very constructive, and so has Mr. Zhu with our side. We've had over 30 interactions between April 7th and last night when we unleashed the deal. That's an awful lot of interactions on very, very difficult, very, very complex issues, and yet within that very small time frame, we're able to come to a deal. And we'll find out very soon. July 16th is a wink and a blink.
No, you're right about that. You're right about that. Are you worried about, this is outside your purview, Secretary, but the Comey stuff and all the back and forth about independent commissions, and we got to get a prosecutor on this, that regardless of what you feel on those matters, that it is going to delay progress on other matters, maybe the tax cuts, the health care thing, and that this could be a problem for the Republican agenda?
Well, I think the Democrats have been throwing sand into everything to try to slow it down. My perception is that they're scared to death that we're going to make the economy really jump-started and that will bode ill for them in the 2018 elections. Even take last night, they did confirm finally as U.S. Trade Representative my friend Bob Lighthizer. Now, they slow-walked him for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and yet at the end of the day, he got a huge number of votes. I think he got something like 82 votes out of the 100. So what was the point of slow-walking him? I think the only point was... the longest time
it's ever taken for a president's full cabinet to be approved, as a side note there. But I am wondering then, sir, about the tone in Washington, whatever you want to say, that it is going to delay this agenda. Are you in the camp that says if the tax cuts have to be pushed to next year, they're just not going to happen?
Well, that's not really within my purview. I'm pretty busy.
But are you worried about that?
Well, I'm worried that all elements of the president's program are necessary. We need tax reform. We need regulatory reform. We need health care reform. We need to unleash American energy, and we need to fix the trade problems. So all of those are interdependent, and it's the cumulative effect of all of those that will really unleash the economy.
Do you personally think China cheats, Secretary, that they rig their currency, that rig the numbers they present us, that they have a way of rigging trade deals in their favor, and that whatever happens to this agreement, we have to watch it very closely, because to hear your boss say it when he was running for president, they're just not to be trusted?
Well, you have to, in any trade deal, the key is enforceability. And as I think you're aware, our administration has done a lot more in trade enforcement than anybody before has done. We put out a $1 billion countervailing duty preliminary finding against Canada in the softwood lumber. You didn't hear numbers like that in prior administrations. So we are very strong on enforcement. The Chinese know that, and there will be a huge blow-up if they don't comply with the July 16th date. I have every expectation that in this case they will live up to their bargain, because we're developing personal relationships, and personal relationships in Asia in general and in China in particular are of the utmost importance. They're much more important even than a contract.
All right. Secretary, good catching up with you. Appreciate it.
Good to talk with you, Neil.